What's going on, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens? This is True for Shield's Rest, and today I want to talk about adversary encounter building in Daggerheart using Grove Guardians and Verdant Defenders. So let's get into it. So your party is trekking through the woods and notices a clearing. They decide it's time to take a short rest. It's nice and peaceful here, so why not? You decide it's time for a little bit of a random encounter. Do you go with a bear attack, a wolf pack attack? Or are you going to go a little more interesting, like Grove Guardians or Verdant Defenders? That's what I want to talk about today in today's video, getting into what those options are and how you can make things a little bit more interesting for your world. Make your players find your world a little bit more intriguing, knowing that, you know what, there's dangers everywhere, not just in the obvious places. And that's where Verdant Defenders and Grove Guardians can really come into play for you and your game. And really and truly, they fit in just about anywhere. As long as there's woods, they fit perfectly. So, first we want to start off with what are your options? Then we want to get into some of those environments that you can bring in that are obviously woods, but some of the different features that we can get into when it comes to your forest environment. And then let's get into, obviously, building the encounters from easy all the way to climactic, so that way you have, no matter what kind of power level you want to bring to this random encounter, you have your options and you know exactly what to do. So let's start off with our adversary encounter list. So let's get into our adversary list for Grove Guardians, starting with the Minor Treant. So the Minor Treant is a minion with 10 difficulty, -2 for their attack modifier, and a clawed branch melee attack dealing 4 physical damage. Now for its features, it's going to be pretty typical. It's going to be your group attack that costs 2 action points or 2 fear tokens, and then the minion passive with 4 in parentheses, so nothing new there. Now getting into the Sylvan Soldier. This is going to be your standard type tier 1 adversary, 11 difficulty, +0 for the attack modifier, and the scythe melee attack that does 2d6 +2 physical damage. They have a major of 6, severe 11, 4 hit points, and 2 stress. The features that it brings is going to be pack tactics, forest control, and blend in, which are some fantastic features and completely on theme. Some of my favorite features, if I'm being honest, because blend in is super fun to have when you're going to be messing with your party a little bit, especially if you bring in a couple of Sylvan soldiers. This is going to be a lot of fun. Same goes with forest control. I mean, just the idea of bringing down a tree within close range, I think that's fantastic. That definitely shows that this is very much so a forest type adversary, and I think that's wonderful. Now getting into my favorite adversary of this Grove Guardians list is going to be the Deeproot Defender. This is going to be your tier 1 Bruiser type adversary. 10 difficulty with a +2 for the attack modifier. It also has a Vines close range 2d8 +7 physical damage. It has a major of 8, a severe of 14, 7 HP, and 3 stress. Now getting into its features, Ground Slam is a wonderful one to have just sitting off to the side, especially when you just want to use a fear token to knock back your players and just add in a little bit more by dynamic combat. And it doesn't deal any damage, but it does deal stress, and I think that's great. And then Grab and Drag is a fantastic action as well. So when you make an attack roll against a close target, on a success you can spend the fear to pull them into melee, dealing 2d8 +3 physical damage, and they are considered restrained. Not just that though, in order to break that condition, the Bruiser has to take severe damage. I think that is fantastic, okay? That's so on theme and just exactly the flavor you're looking for with this kind of adversary. Now getting into the Young Dryad. The Young Dryad is your tier 1 leader for this group here. They have a difficulty of 11, attack modifier of +0, and then a scythe melee attack of 2d8 +5 physical damage. They have a major of 6 and a severe of 11 with 4 HP and 2 stress. Now you're not bringing the Young Dryad for its attack capability. No, you are bringing it for its features. Its feature of Voice of the Forest is a fantastic action to have when you have enough of those adversaries surrounding the players to be able to do that kind of attack. Same goes for Thorny Cage. Like, that is a fun one to be able to imprison one of your players, especially one that's your melee. Oh, that's going to frustrate the crap out of that player. Now, when you're looking through these adversaries, I want you to think about not only them as actual adversaries that are going against the players, but as allies. Potential allies for the players to be able to utilize, whether that's in an army situation or just as an ally that they can call upon when they're in trouble. So think of it like that, and it helps you kind of understand these features that they have a little bit more sometimes when you look at it. How could the players utilize it for their own means rather than against the players? It's fun to think about against the players, but sometimes you got to think about for the players. Now, looking at the Verdant Defenders, these are going to be your Tier 3 adversaries, and it's basically just a tiered-up version of the Grove Guardians, but let's go through them anyways because they have different features and different capability, which is just, I love it. I love the flavor that these Tier 3s bring, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's look at that first, starting with the Tree Sapling. So the Tree Sapling is going to be your Tier 3 minion that has a difficulty of 14, a +0 for its attack modifier, and branches melee 8 physical damage. Still bringing that 1 hit point and that 1 stress, but its features are going to be a little bit higher up because it is a Tier 3, so obviously that's going to increase its minion passive, this time being 8. It still has the same group attack just like all the other minions, so nothing new there. So looking at the Stag Knight, this is going to be your Tier 3 standard adversary. It's got a difficulty of 17, an attack modifier of +3, and a bramble sword, melee 2d10 +5 physical damage. It has a major of 22 and a severe of 39. Its HP is 7 and stress of 5. Now, it brings some great features to the table, like Canopy Dive. You cannot go wrong with Canopy Dive. That one is so much fun. I just imagine these Stag Knights are just hanging out in like one of the Oak Trents and just waiting to dive and ambush down onto the party or onto a group of adversaries that your party is going against, and these guys just dive down to help them out. I think that is so much fun. Same goes with Thorny Armor. You really can't go wrong with that one, and it's so on theme anyways. Now, looking at Blade of the Force, this is a very interesting action to have, and one that we kind of need to discuss just a little bit, okay? So when this adversary is very close to at least 2 other adversaries, spend a fear to make an attack against every target in very close range. Each target this succeeds against takes physical damage equal to the target's major threshold plus 3d4. So what that means is it's going to be the target's major threshold. So whoever the target is of this attack from the Stag Knight, it's going to be their major threshold. So let's say their major threshold is a 13. Now you add that plus 3d4. That is a great action. I freaking love this thing. This can get deadly really quickly, especially against players with high major thresholds. That is going to be nuts. Now, getting into the Oak Treant. This is going to be your Tier 3 Bruiser type. Difficulty 17, attack modifier +2, and branch, very close range, 2d8 plus 20 physical damage. It has a major of 28, severe 45, 8 HP, and 4 stress. Now, getting into its features, it's got some really cool ones. First and foremost being Acorn Barrage. This is a great one to have just at your disposal, especially while he's sitting back and just firing away with this thing. Perfect. And then same goes for just a Tree Oak. This is a great way to basically have it situated in these groves where there's no reason for your players to suspect anything, so there's no reason for them to really be making the instinct check, if I'm being honest. However, if they decide to, because it feels a little off in here, then they can go ahead and do so, and they might notice, like, did that tree, like, shudder? Maybe that oak just shuddered a little bit. But in either case, maybe they'll miss the Stag Knights that are hiding in its branches. Just saying. Take Root is a great action. Now, just for marking a stress, they can basically dig deep down with their roots and reduce all damage by 8. But the best part is it basically turns into the Whomping Willow and just starts going to town now. Like, it knows it's not going anywhere right now. So in order to reduce that damage down, all you gotta do is mark a stress, and then it can just go to town with its branch attacks. That is gonna be nuts. Alright, for our final adversary for the Verdant Defenders and for this video is going to be the Dryad. Basically, it's no longer a young Dryad. It's really all it ends up being. It is your Tier 3 leader, 16 difficulty, plus 4 attack modifier, with a Deadfall short bow, far range, 2d10 plus 3 physical damage. It has a major of 29 and a severe of 45, along with 9 HP and 5 stress. Now, this Dryad does have some great features, starting off with Bramble Patch. This is a great area denial sort of feature. And then getting into We Are All One, this is a great way for the Dryad to basically be able to heal and to be able to clear that stress. So feel free to just continuously use the stress, because as these adversaries go down, it's just clearing and clearing and clearing. So can't go wrong with that. And then Grow Sapling is such a great one to have at your disposal. It just keeps bringing these little minion adversaries to the field for the Dryad to be able to use as kind of a bodyguard situation, so he keeps leveling arrows into the party. Can't go wrong with that. Now, getting into the different environments you can bring here, so a forest can really take on a lot of different features depending on what's going on with the context of your world. Of course, looking at the Abandoned Grove, that is not a bad one to look at and basically model your environment starting off with, and then you can kind of plug and play features in for what works for your world. So the Abandoned Grove is a Tier 1, difficulty 11 environment. Now, getting into its features, it does have a few interesting features, one being Overgrown Battlefield, which is a passive, kind of an investigative exploration sort of situation for your players to be able to find out more about what's going on in this spot, right? Now, you can, of course, replace that with whatever makes sense for your world. Of course, context is key here. So you can really throw in whatever you want, but it gives them something to explore, something to investigate, which is something kind of nice about environments in Daggerheart. Most of them have something like this where it kind of gives your players something to look into and look forward to when they get into environments. Something like, ooh, what could possibly be here kind of moment. Which is something as a GM I like because it reminds me, you know what, let me create something interesting here that's not just story driven, but just something that's interesting about this place. And if they, I don't know, pass a knowledge test or an instinct check, something to that effect, they can learn whatever it is. You know, nothing wrong with that. Also getting into You Are Not Welcome here, this is basically just a pre-planned encounter that you can insert. You know, I think that's wonderful. And they are just doing it in the form of a feature. Why not do that just with every environment? So that way you have some form of an encounter here that you could trigger if you really wanted to, in case for whatever reason play gets a little slow, the players just aren't on their toes right now, or maybe you just feel it's time to hit them with a combat. Speaking of combat, Defiler is a great action to have with the Abandoned Grove. It kind of shows like there's some echoes of the past here that have really not quite resolved themselves and have formed into this sort of negative energy, minor chaos elemental, you know? But you can change that with whatever you want. You can change that to whatever fits the bill for your world. But it's a great way to like look at environments and see what are my possible options and what could I do or how could I change this just a little bit to fit my context. Now for my favorite part of the video, and that's building encounters. If you do not know how to build easy, standard, challenging, or climactic encounters, go ahead and check out my video above so that way you know exactly what we're talking about as we build these. Now the other part of this is we want to assume that we have 4 players, okay? I want to assume 4 players like I do with all my other videos, just because it's a quick, easy, standard group that most people deal with. But if you have more, if you have less, it doesn't matter. Just change the numbers up. That's all you got to do. Now, starting off with the easy encounter build, I'm going to actually give you 2 different types of easy encounters. That's going to be for the Tier 1 side of the house with the Grove Guardians, and then the Tier 3 side of the house being the Verdant Defenders. Now, starting with the Tier 1 easy encounter, we're going to be bringing 1 Deeproot Defender and 2 Minor Treants. This brings all the flavor that you want without all of the possible threats of death for your players. This is going to be an easy encounter for them to deal with, no threat at all, but it's going to be a lot of fun and just so on theme and so satisfying for your players. Now you can also bring 4 Sylvan soldiers if you really wanted to as like a patrol that comes through. Something that tells the players that there's something more going on here. This forest might be a little older than they were expecting. That there's something fae or fairy going on in this place that they might want to be a little bit more careful about. Now looking at the Tier 3 side, we want to bring something similar to the Tier 1, but it's going to be an Oak Treant as well as 2 Treant Saplings. This brings that same flavor, but it does it in a Tier 3 sort of fashion. Now instead of bringing 4 Sylvan soldiers, we're going to instead bring 2 Stag Knights as well as 4 Treant Saplings. I know it doesn't normally talk about bringing in minions at this stage of the game within an easy encounter, but what gets easier than dealing with minions? I'm just saying. But you can really bring this in story-wise, like maybe they're escorting these saplings to where they're supposed to be implanted at. Who knows? Or maybe it's more of a patrol situation, but it's a little bit higher level of a patrol situation. You know, more of a Tier 3 kind of patrol. You know what I'm saying? So, something to think about. Now getting into the standard Tier 1 encounter, we're going to be bringing 1 Deeproot Defender, 2 Sylvan Soldiers, and 4 Minor Treants. The 2 Sylvan Soldiers, I basically want them riding in the Deeproot Defender. So as the Deeproot Defender moves along, there's the 2 Sylvan Soldiers. Or you could have it in that grove situation we mentioned earlier, where basically they're just hanging out off to the side, waiting for somebody to try and disrupt this perfect, beautiful, calm grove. And they can just get ready to drop down out of the tree and mess some players up. Now looking at tier 3, we're going to be doing the exact same thing, but we're just going to make it tier 3 adversaries, where it's 1 oak treant, 2 stag knights, and 4 treant saplings. Same situation, same idea, just tiered up, that's all. Now getting into the challenging encounter. The challenging encounter, we've got a few more options to work with. This is when we can start bringing in that leader adversary. So I want to bring in 1 young Dryad, along with 4 minor treants. And let's say that they're probably going to be in the environment of the abandoned grove. Or if you don't feel like bringing a Dryad, you could always bring in that 1 Deeproot defender with 2 Sylvan soldiers and 4 minor treants. Now same thing for the tier 3 side of the house. The tier 3 side of the house, you might as well just mirror over from the tier 1 at this point, because let's face it, a Dryad with 4 treant saplings, you can't go wrong with, okay? Same thing, put it in an abandoned grove, or maybe it's like the burning heart of the forest or what have you kind of environment. Just have some fun with that one. And then of course we want to bring in that 1 oak treant. Maybe we bring in 3 stag knights instead, as well as 4 treant saplings, just to make it a little bit more challenging. Those 3 stag knights dropping out of the oak treant is going to be nuts. Now for the climactic encounter. The climactic encounter is going to be so much fun. This is going to be painful for your party, if only slightly. So we're going to be bringing in 1 young Dryad. We're also going to be bringing in 6 minor treants, and then 2 Deeproot defenders and 2 Sylvan soldiers. That is going to be a crazy thing for your party to deal with. Just saying, it's going to be wild. But if you don't want to bring in those 3 minor treants, you could bring in another 3 Sylvan soldiers, especially if you wanted bulked out in more of an army sort of fashion. Sylvan soldiers you cannot go wrong with. Alright, for the tier 3 climactic encounter, we're going to be bringing in 1 Dryad, as well as 2 oak treants, and 4 stag knights, and just 2 treant saplings. Now getting into the strategy of the tier 3 climactic encounter, the reason why I want to talk strategy for this one is because this is going to be one that you really want to be prepared for as far as how that's going to look strategically speaking. So if I were running this, I'd run this where the Dryad is standing in the back, flanked between 2 oak treants, okay? They're going to be standing in the back and they're going to be going to town at range, sending in all the treant saplings, moving them forward with the stag knights. They're going to be doing a ton of control of the battlefield, okay? There's going to be basically this wall of treant saplings and stag knights ready to go. So that's kind of the way you want to work this. And so as your players hit that wall, your oak treants are going to be there to basically throw in whatever they need to, whether that's at range or whether they get up close and they go Whomping Willow on their asses, okay? Just saying. You're going to open up a can of Whomping Willow? I don't know. Now getting into the Dryad really quick. The Dryad's going to be standing in back, leveling arrows into the players, right? But let's say one of your players actually makes it into melee combat. They finally get there, they're so excited because they're like, got this guy. Problem is that Dryad's actually going to be healing as those treant saplings and the stag knights and the oak treants go down. And he's still able to send in more treant saplings as you're spending that fear. So it's going to feel almost like an endless woods are just coming after your players. The cool part is what if this particular group is actually helping your players? What if this group comes out of nowhere to aid your players in what they're trying to do? That would be so much fun to see this group come out of nowhere as allies rather than as enemies. Well, hopefully this video helps you to choose something other than your basic bear attack or your basic wolf pack attack, something a little more interesting, a little more dynamic. Hopefully you can see how you can start using some of these environments in a better way that brings in a little bit more context to your world. However, if you would do something different, let me know down in the comments below, because I am very curious to see what other people are doing in their games. How you might change the environments to kind of fit the theming for your world in particular. What kind of mechanics do you bring into those environments or into some of the Verdant defenders or even the Grove Guardians? Maybe you changed up some of their features to kind of fit your context a little bit better. Let us know below. Help everybody else out, you know? That's exactly what we're here for on the channel, is to help everybody get as much content as they possibly can for the games and the systems that they enjoy playing. So until the next one, keep that shield wall strong.